Okay. Already screen. Hello, good morning, distinguished guests. This is me. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Leena Al Mujahed. I am from ALFA University, and I'm the founder of the Yemeni Refugee Women Organization. So I came from Malaysia, but originally I'm from Yemen. So my work is with refugee women. We focus on women empowerment, healthcare, and education. So in this study called From Conflict Zones to World Stages, How Struggle, Leadership, and Advocacy Empower Women Rising Beyond Borders. That works. How to move slides. Okay.
This one.
Okay. Thank you. So starting for this study, let's just highlight about women in conflict zones. We can call them the forgotten leaders. About 600 million of women are living in conflict zones. 80 million are displaced worldwide. 70% of these women are invisible in peace building. And of course, 100% of these women are agents of a change. So first, let me thank the Yemeni Refugee Women Organization, who's based in Malaysia, registered under the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, for helping in all the research and the studies in this article. And also I wanted to thank other women leaders, refugee women leaders in Malaysia, from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sudan, Somalia, Syria, Palestine, and of course Yemen, on also helping me in doing this research. Actually, this study is deeply, I can see it deeply belonged to me because it also reflected my journey, because me, myself, I came from Yemen. I came from a conflict place. In 2015, the war started in Yemen, and in 2018, I moved to Malaysia. So I used to advocate in my own country, but now I moved this advocacy to Malaysia and to South Asia countries, empowering refugee women from diverse places. So to start this study, actually, in this study, we highlight how women from conflict zones, usually they face displacement, violence, and many other issues, but still they transform this pain into a leadership skills. They never choose it, but they found themselves doing that. And this study also highlights how advocacy and community mobilization become a vehicle for empowerment. Always, I said that pain brings leadership abilities to many women in the conflict zones. And also in this study, we'll explore how leadership as a process is rooted in survival and moral strength and social justice. So to start, we know that women in conflict zone and refugee women or displaced women are facing violence, displacement, and social hardship, social economic hardship. But still in these positions, these women still emerge as vital actors in rebuilding societies and fostering peace. But of course, the challenge narratives we highlight in this study, that their leadership challenge is the traditional narratives that those women are seen as victims and as survivors, not as leaders or peace-building women. Okay, in this study, we highlight the problem statement. First is ignored leadership. we are facing a global policy frameworks is ignoring the leadership of women in conflict zones. And this is what I saw and I faced during my work with refugee women, with like UNHCR or other international organizations. Usually those women, they never take serious to the policy makers platforms. Usually they just collecting the information and the database from them, and they are using by their own. They never have, or I can see 80% of these women, they don't have the opportunity to participate or to share their vision globally with international platforms. And of course, exclusion from governance. We can see a lot of lack of inclusion in formal governance and peace process for women in conflict zones. And the advocacy unrecognized, limited acknowledgement of advocacy as a leadership act. The aim of this study, or the main aim of this study, is to explore how women transform struggle into leadership and empowerment across borders. And to achieve this aim, I focused on 3 objectives in this study. First is to analyze leadership emergence through conflict experiences. Second is to investigate advocacy's role in enabling empowerment. And third is to develop a conceptual framework linking the struggle, leadership, and empowerment. And in this study, we have 3 theories. So we focused on 3 theories in this study. The first one is the feminist leadership theory, which emphasizes collaboration, empathy, and inclusion. Second theory is transformational leadership theory, which focuses on moral authority and change through shared vision. And third is intersectionally, is a knowledge overlapping inequalities like gender, race, class, or conflict states. I don't know why the slides look like that. Anyway, the main key concepts, we try to define the main key concept in this study with the struggle, leadership, advocacy, and empowerment. And of course, in this kind of studies, we are facing social norms and barriers. And I focused on these 4 barriers. First is the patriarchal traditions, which still marginalize women's participation in leadership, and the cultural stigma still attached to assistive female leadership. And this is what we still face, even we are displaced on another country, but we still face this kind of stigma. Institutional exclusion. Women in leadership process, they still facing the institutional exclusion from decision-making spaces. And of course, we have the societal pressure, because these women living in conflict zone, they're still facing that woman is woman, man is man. So leadership is just belong to men, it's not belong to women. And actually, even me, myself, I'm still facing this kind of pressure. So the main catalyst, or we can see that struggle is the main catalyst for leadership. So through that, women gain emotional intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. And of course, crisis push women to a leadership rules by necessity. Those women, they never choose to be a leaders, or they don't know that one day they will be a leaders or change makers in their society, but they started this rule from the kitchen, from the camps, to globally. And collective solidarity always create community-driven problem solving. Here we are seeing that usually women in conflict zone, they start locally by advocate for access to education, access to healthcare, or access or safety. But they're trying, and we can see that they expand their networks into a national and international campaigns, which helps a lot to advocate more about it. And Digital platforms amplify marginalized voices, connecting the local issues to the global movements. The main framework of this study is this flow: struggle, leadership, advocacy, empowerment. And the mediators that influence the study are the education, cultural capital, and institutional inclusion. Okay, based on the theory we have mentioned in this study, we have the theoretical propositions. That's struggle fosters resilience that enhance leadership capacity, and always advocacy play a main role in translating leadership into empowerment, and support amplifies outcomes. Usually, cultural and institutional support amplify empowerment outcomes. In this study, of course, we couldn't make individual study, but we studied 3 countries, which is Yemen, Sudan, and Palestine. So in Yemen, women in Yemen, usually they lead peace committees, and they more focus on health and girls' education. And many initiatives and women, they start advocacy for girls and education locally, but they bring this initiatives globally. But still, why we couldn't make any direct contact? Because by communicate with women in Yemen, we put them in a risk of arrest, because women are not allowed to lead any initiatives, especially when it comes to support girls or women, even it's education or healthcare. And the women there, they don't have the access to the global platforms because of the limitation of the politics situation there. But still, their informal leadership within the humanitarian network gives a lot of impact. In Sudan, we know Sudanese women, they mobilized grassroots resistance against authoritarian rule even before the war, especially on term of healthcare. And in Sudan, we found that the ability to use digital platform to coordinate civic movement was great. And even after post-conflict, Sudanese women still advocate for justice and gender equity. In Palestine, we know that Palestinian women always represent and advocate for their case or for their cause culturally. So in Palestine, women lead education initiatives and community health programs, and they become the culture ambassadors. They serve as a culture ambassadors within many networks, and advocacy as identity preservation amid occupation. From that, we learned some global lessons. That's local leadership inspire global reform agendas, and by sharing narratives, we can create international solidarity, and empowerment grows through cross-border collaboration and mutual learning. So I came from Malaysia, so I took Malaysia as an example. So in Malaysia, or usually women in ASEAN and Muslim societies, we found that there is a balance between faith and modernity. And as I said, Malaysia as an example of integrating gender equality into a policy, we saw more than 200,000 refugees in Malaysia, and 70% of the refugees are women, displaced women, and 50% of these women are leading initiatives, and they lead community-based organization, advocate for their societies. And for cultural ethics in Malaysia, we found that empowerment aligned with religious and cultural ethics. Through the discussions, we found that struggle is a foundation, is not a limitation. By that, leadership in conflict zone always transit formal and advocacy links to the from local suffering to global awareness. The policy implications from this study is to integrate women leadership into peace and security policies, to fund education and capacity building for women in post-conflict recovery, and to foster partnerships between local activists and global institutions. And academically, expands feminist and transformation leadership theories. Second, to introduce the Raising Beyond Borders empowerment model. And third is to highlight the leadership from conflict zones to global in more serious and professional way. But the practical implications are the NGOs applications. That's framework applicable to NGOs, policymakers and educators, and to build strategies for building inclusive leadership pipelines, and to promote mentorship and digital advocacy skills. Of course, this study aligns with the SDGs. So in this study, we align with SDG 5, with gender equality, and SDG 16 for peace and justice, and sustainable development always empower and align with sustainable peace and inclusive development. And same as any other study, this study have also a limitation, which are in lakes of quantitative or field data validation. We mostly collect the information from women who used to advocate in their zones or their countries, but they moved as refugees in Malaysia from different countries. And for future research direction, we hope to conduct qualitative interviews with women leaders in conflict regions, but so far it's quite difficult, and to compare empowerment pathways across regions, and to integrate digital transformation in future empowerment model. Thank you so much, and I wish through this research to build more research dedicated to the countless women worldwide who transform struggles into strength, leading humanity toward peace and justice. And of course, I want to thank the Yemeni Refugee Women Organization for helping and support, and who is supporting and helping on this study are refugee women themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I now take this pleasure of inviting Rabia Amir to facilitate Leena Khaled Al Mujahed with keynote certificate.